All right, welcome everyone. Super excited for today's episode of Third Power Life. I am here with my good friend Phil Gerbyshak. He and I have known each other for a long time. I want to. We're doing dueling podcasts, right? So you're getting Third Power Life and go.
You're getting the happiness practices, all about how to be happier and reduce or eliminate burnout in your life.
Excellent, excellent.
Should
So
be good.
I'm super excited. Yeah. Excellent. Right? Was it the Burns?
Yes, come on, Smithers, let's go.
Exactly. But so super excited that we're able to connect today. I know we've known each other since 2016. Hard to believe that it's been that long,
Yeah, it does.
but so just super excited you're here. I know that everybody that listens to my podcast desperately needs to hear what you have to say, and hopefully a couple of people on yours need to hear what I've got.
I only have 7, Dan, so I'm sure they're going to love you.
Excellent. But so I wonder if you could kind of tell me a little bit about how you got started with the happiness this happiness thing, and kind of what's your backstory? Why are you here?
Yeah, well, if we really rewind, back when I started blogging, I had a blog called Make It Great, all about make, which is an active verb, right? You got to make something. Great, which is a superlative, and then it is whatever it is. Well, let me tell you, when Microsoft bought makeitgreat.com and then Pizza Hut decided that was going to be their theme, that was kind of killed any thoughts of any sort of SEO. So I went to my name.com, and then in 2010, 2011, I started talking about sales because people wanted help learning how to leverage LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook and blogs and podcasts and all this stuff to grow their business. So I pivoted into that, really still with a focus on, okay, this is still something you choose and it's got to be as good as you want it to be. So I still did that, right? And I did that up until about a year and a half, 2 years ago, when I said, you know what? I might still do some consulting on the side. I might have a job as sales, but I really believe that making people happier, and by that, we make ourselves happier, right? Happiness is an inside job. Yep. So helping people do that and helping people eliminate burnout, well, those are pretty noble causes, if you will. So I said, you know what? I'm going to go all in here. So I pushed it out to Happy AF, and now it's the happiness practices, but the URL is still Happy AF.
All right. Yeah. So, yeah. I love that. I went to your site, and you can see it there. Happy AF. So the AF, that's happy and fabulous, right?
Absolutely. No. Well, if that's what you want it to be, I like to say the AF is what you want it to be. So it could be the, as blank, could be for sure. If that's what you want it to be, it could also be happiness. That's your authentic face, meaning how it is for you. Or it could be, it could be, as you said, man, all about fabulousness. And that's okay too, because whatever it is that you want it to be, well, you can have it that way. And I really believe that. I think that that's true for everybody. Nobody can make you happy. You can make yourself happy.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I know that I talk a lot about, one, finding your purpose, but as far as like related to being happy and content, that gratitude is like the absolute key. So my assumption is that you talk just a smidge about gratitude as well. Yes.
Well, I absolutely do. But let's hear about your gratitude practice, though, Dan. I want to hear from you. What's your practice, and then I'll pivot into my practice. Do you have a practice?
I do. I have kind of my morning routine, right? Where I have my journal that I journal in, and all of that. But one of the things that I find, especially on the days where it's a little bit more challenging, I don't know. I'm sure nobody else has.
Really no challenges for anybody here.
But I actually combined it with my life balance program, because I have my life triad and the life balance triad, where it basically breaks life balance into 9 areas, right? And so I actually go through and circle through all 9 areas, and what am I grateful for, right? What am I grateful for spiritually? What am I grateful for mentally and physically? What am I grateful for with my family, with my friends, with my ability to help others? You know, how am I grateful for my financial education, for the income producing possibilities I have, and all of the things that I have? What am I grateful for? To run through all nine of those and like try to spend a couple of minutes on each. And ideally, I do this when I'm walking. Like I'll go walk around our the lake that we've got here, and but it's like going through and being thankful for each of my kids and for my wife and for, so it's really going deep into that. And let me tell you, it is really, really hard to still be not in a good place after doing that. Right? You have to want to be depressed. You have to want to be unhappy after realizing how truly blessed you are in this life.
Wow. Wow. So that's pretty intense, man. I like that. That's got to take you what, 30 to 40 minutes each day?
Yeah, usually it's about 20 to 30 minutes.
Okay. I love
To do
that.
that.
I love that. Well, mine is simpler. I just think about three things I'm grateful for. Three little things, three big
Okay.
things, three anything. So today I might say that I'm grateful for my wife's patience with me, right? Because she is very patient and I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for my three silly dogs because they make me laugh. And I'm grateful that I got to go to the gym today and I got my workout in. So three things, right? And that it's only 10 minutes away. So three little things.
Right.
Some days I post them to Facebook. Some days I write them down in a journal. And some days I just think hard about them. And I spend about 3 to 5 minutes, no more than that.
Gotcha.
And then why I like to post them or why I like to write them is because then when I'm having a crappy day, and like you said, nobody ever has those. But if we do, I can go back then and look at those good days and say, well, I guess today isn't so bad. I still have these three things, and I wonder if I
Right.
have three other things. So for me, it's
I like that.
retrospective as well as its current state. And I think that's really what helps me make my gratitude practice effective. Plus, like I said, it's just 3 to 5 minutes. Now, if I got to walk every day, and that is one of my goals actually, is to walk every day, I would probably take that time to do like you do. And I really love that. I think that's powerful, man.
Nice. I I like the what you're talking about there because it's simple, and that's one of the biggest challenges to consistency, and you know and that's the magic is consistency, is making it easy to do. It's actually why for my journal, I don't know if you're familiar with the bullet journal
Yeah,
method.
for sure. Yep.
Right? I switched to that because I used to, like, think that journaling was like, I have to do this long form, and here's all of my pages, and, there are days when I do that, but most of the time, it's like, "Here's the bullet points. Here's just the quick hits that I want," and that's what makes it viable to do it regularly,
Yeah.
and I think that we can both agree that for gratitude, you know, it needs to be every day. It needs to be regular. It's like trying to go to the gym all at once on January 1st doesn't work for the whole year, right? It's just, it just doesn't. So you've got to go consistently, even if you do just a little bit.
Yeah, I think, yeah, to your point, right? Intensity is not what we're looking for here. We're looking for that consistency. We're looking for every day to do a little bit, and three little things that you can take 3 to 5 minutes for. I think is simple. I think that works, right? I mean, I've got my notebook here right next to me every day, right? And I'm writing
Mhm.
stuff in it, but I also am going to take the time to write down what I'm grateful for. Then I look back and when my notebook is full, and my notebook gets full probably about every 40, 50 days, I can look back and see those things in there. So that's helpful for me. That helps me really stay centered, and it's not too much. And even if I just think about those things, I can then think back, and I'm not always remembering what I had for breakfast yesterday, but some days I do.
Right.
Some days I remember what I'm grateful for, and that helps me. And one of the things about that is don't hit yourself up if you miss a day. Instead, make sure that you don't miss twice. Make sure you
Right.
don't miss 2 days in a row, or 3 days in a row, or 4 days in a row. Just say, you know what? This is a practice. That's why I asked about your gratitude practice, not your gratitude perfect, right? It's about a practice. You're doing your
Absolutely.
best, and that's okay. I mean, even law, right? Lawyers practice law. They don't perfect law. They just do their best. So think of yourself the same way.
Agreed. Yeah. I have a little mini thing that course or whatever that I do, but it's the magic of restarts,
Oh yeah.
and it's it to be successful, you don't have to not fail and to not miss days. It's shortening the time from when you do miss to the time that you restart and start over again with the commitment, right? And so yeah,
Love
exactly.
that, Dan. I think that's great. I'm gonna have to think on that more and how that works for me, because I think the magic of shortening the restart, I think, is a great suggestion.
Yeah. 'Cause the reality is that I actually it was one of my my ex-wife actually said it to me once, because I tend to like get really down on myself about all the things that I haven't done and all of that.
Mm,
And she goes, "Dear, the position of perfection and omnipotence is taken."
right on. Right on.
I'm like, yes, yeah. So we're all fallible. We're all human. So that we're going to mess up. We're going to miss. We're going to make mistakes. And to think otherwise is kind of ridiculous of ourselves if we think about
Yeah, and very unrealistic.
it. Yeah.
So what do you do about comparison, Dan? Do you compare yourself against anybody? Is that a problem for you too, right? The comparison trap?
No, I am completely perfect in that respect.
Fantastic. All right, next topic. Okay, so
Next
Dan.
topic. Yeah, no. I try very hard to only compare myself against who I used to be.
Mm,
That is for me. That's the goal, right? Um, I I wish I could say that was always the case, but it's not. I will see people. It's like I started like internet marketing with that person, and they're now making $1 million a year. What's wrong with me? I was with this person in the National Speakers Association, and they're now making like all of that. Why can't I do that? Yeah. So um, the biggest thing is catching yourself when you do find yourself doing it. For me, it's like really, really, right? Yeah. So that's I would say the biggest challenge for us as human beings is to think before we react and before we feel, whether it's talking about comparing ourselves or getting angry at our kids or anything. It's that I saw something the other day. It was between stimulus and response is a space, and that space is what makes us human.
mm.
And so for me, whenever I find myself comparing myself to someone else, that's I try to like, okay, capture the space, right? Capture that. They have challenges that you know nothing about, right? I can, we see on social media how everybody has this wonderful, perfect life. And the reality is the people, they may be making $1 million. They may be on the hugest stages in the world, but how's their marriage? How's their relationship with their kids? How's their health? Right? We don't know what other thing and more importantly, what did they go through? What was the work that they put in to get there that you don't see because it was all behind the scenes that I haven't done yet? Right. So
Yeah,
that's kind of how I
that's interesting, right? Because for me, I just remind myself that it's none of my damn business what they do or who they are, and I kind of shut myself off right there. Like it doesn't really matter. I try not to compare. I'm not telling you I'm perfect at it, but when I catch myself comparing, I say, you know what? It's none of my business what Dan's doing. Like I can cheer you on, but it's
right.
really none of my business. Because to your point, I think we all choose our suffering, right? We all
Yeah.
choose that. We all say, okay, if I want to run a marathon, that means I have to be willing to run 26.2 miles. Dan, I am not willing to run 26.2 miles. I am happy to run a 5K now and then. That's as
Mhm.
far as I want to run. Sometimes I might walk a little further than that, but I'm not a good runner. And I don't want to do that. So I choose my suffering is I'm going to be a little fluffy. I'm going to be a little heavier than I want to be. And that's okay because I am not going to choose to run 26.2 miles. Just a different way to look at it, right?
It is.
Just,
It is.
and I don't
I
know that
like it.
I don't know that either way is right or wrong. In fact, I would argue that both are correct. It's what stokes your fire. It's not what stokes mine. Like whatever works for you, and as folks are listening, as they're watching, it's whatever gets you going to redo this, right? I mean, Dan and I are going to share some thoughts that we have, but if you think this is all hooey, well, that's okay. Find out what works for you. I mean, do the exact opposite of what we're talking about. It might actually work. It's interesting. Sometimes I think we forget that just because it worked for you, Dan, it doesn't mean it's going to work for me, Phil.
Oh, come on now. I am the paragon of perfection and what all human beings need to be focused on. So, I mean, the way I do it is right. No.
Okay, well,
Not,
that's good.
not at
Because you
all.
pointed that
Not
out
at all.
before, right? No, and I know you're being cheeky, right? But we really know that nobody has the right path for us, but they have a path for us, perhaps, right? They have, systems and process. We're showing off your cool, the way that you do that. You're going to repurpose this conversation is super cool. And there's a lot there, right? And if I thought, oh boy, I'm not doing those 46 things like Dan is, I'd feel like a total loser. Instead, I say, you know what? Dan's doing it his way. I'm going to do it my way. And maybe I can steal a little bit of Dan's because, to steal is the best way of being an artist. Steal some ideas, steal some of the tips, and more importantly, in some cases, steal the process. Steal the process. And then don't worry about the output because your output is going to be your output. And you might have a totally different space than Dan does than I do for different things.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's, we're all unique. And we all have our own paths. And that kind of ties in where, we don't know what that person's going through that we're trying to compare ourselves to get. It's like, you don't know what their path is. And you don't know what challenges they've faced and what maybe challenges they haven't faced that you have that gives you a superpower. You just need to tap into it. No, that's very true. Very true. Now, I know that one of the things that you talk a lot about, and part of the Happy AF movement, is with burnout. And as I like to say, I've recently recovered from burnout. My previous job was, we'll just call it challenging, and then leave the rest of that story for an evening over drinks.
Deal.
But I'm just curious what you have seen as a way to kind of identify when you're in burnout, and some of the tips that you might have for somebody who is like working themselves to death, kind of like I was.
Sure. Well, first, how to know if you're in burnout is you first trust your gut. Like if your gut says, you know what, Phil, you're probably burnt out. Well, you're probably burnt out. That's the first way. The second way is look at your habits. Are you not doing anything that used to give you joy? So if I love to write, I love to read, I love to learn, I love to walk. If I'm not doing any of those things, it might be because I'm burnt out. It could be either burnout or depression. Let's be clear. If it's depression, well, then go seek a professional. And yes. I've had depression.
Me too.
I still suffer from that some. I'm still medicated from that, but it's also burnout. It's also burnout, right? So am I overwhelmed? So how do we work through that? Step one, when it comes to that, set some boundaries for yourself. Remember that no is a complete sentence. Yes. Not just for yourself, but for everybody else, right? So I could say, Dan, between 2 and 3, I'm just not available at that time. And you might say, oh, well, that's the only time I have available, in which case, now I have a choice. I can say, you know what, I'm going to move my unavailable time to 3 to 4, or I can say, you know what, Dan, that just doesn't work for me. And then you have a choice, and then it's up to you, right? So set some boundaries for me, set some boundaries for others. No is a complete sentence, really important. Second is surround yourself with a good social network. Surround yourself with people that care about you and that you care about. So
Right.
do some, what I like to call pebbling. If you pebble people like a penguin does, that means you throw just little rocks like you and I do sometimes, Dan. It's like, hey, Dan, how you doing?
Yep.
Hey, Dan, I was thinking about you. Little pebbles, just to let you know that you still matter. And then sometimes throw the big rock. Hey, Dan, let's spend an hour together. Let's record a podcast. And that's totally cool, right? So with that, that social network is really important because the Surgeon General has found in his research that loneliness, like smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Well, if it's
Really?
like smoking, yeah, if it's like smoking 15 cigarettes a day, you can only imagine how much that burns you out. So I would ask, if you're in burnout, when is the last time you reached out to someone that you really care about? When is the last time that you really went deep with them and spent some time in their presence and really shared some of the crap that's going on in your life? So that would be number 2. And then the third one is really about kind of energy and time management. Energy and time management. So energy management is when am I most productive? When am I most happy? When am I most feeling myself? And when those things are, do the hardest things then.
Right.
For me, those things happen in the morning. I am most productive, most happy in the morning. So I do my best to schedule my writing for the morning. If I've got to learn something, like I've got a class coming up in 3 weeks that I need to get really deep on. So I didn't do it this morning, so I pushed it to tomorrow morning. Not tomorrow afternoon, but tomorrow morning. So I'll spend a couple hours on that tomorrow morning because that's my energy management. And then if we think about productivity, as far as time management goes, I'll give you a couple of tips on that. Number 1 is the Pomodoro method. Set a timer for 25. I like to set it for 20. There you go. You got 25. I like to say 20 minutes because I want 5 minutes of prep, 5 minutes of cool down, and 20 minutes of activity. That's my full 30 minutes, right? So I like to do those. I call those a sales sprint. You don't have to sell, but I worked in sales, so I call it that. With that, from there, another time management hack is block your calendar for the most important things. I just said 2 to 3, not a time for me. I can block my calendar so that people can't book that time. Right. That doesn't mean that now and then I can't make an exception, but I told you my boundary. I blocked the time on my calendar. And now to get through to that, you have to have a conversation with me in order to make that happen. And 2 to 3 is not my block time, by the way. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is block some time. In fact, I'll block that time tomorrow, already blocked, so nobody is getting on my calendar so that I can do that deep work. Cal Newport calls that deep work, and I would call that deep work as well. I think the deep work is the hard, important work that we think is going to take a long time, but often is not, but it is focused work. And so we have to focus. So that's the second time management hack. The third one that I'll share is taking 5 minutes for you. And I integrate that with the sales sprint. But if I can set a timer for 5 minutes and do something for me, I can then manage my time and I can manage my energy. I can take that 5 minutes. I can walk around the block. I can take 5 minutes and go get a glass of water. I can take 5 minutes and play with my dogs. I can take 5 minutes and honestly shut the lid of my computer and just be by myself. 5 minutes helps me manage my energy and my time. So those are my 3 tips for time management. I gave you one for energy management and kind of really 2 there. So what about you, Dan? How did you deal with it?
Well, for me, it was interesting that the way that I realized that, okay, this is, because I'm like, I'm so stressed out, I'm so tired all the time, and I know this stuff. I talk about it, and I'm like, I'm seeing all of the signs, but the point where it was like it became real, right? There's the understanding, and then there's it becomes real.
Yeah.
Right? It was, they say, the longest distance a man will ever travel is the distance from his head to his heart. And so I remember waking up one morning, and I opened my eyes and became conscious, and my first thought was, oh beep, I have to do this again, right? and it was like, and that was where I set, kind of the default thing was, I got to do it again. I don't want to. Right. And I'm like, oh, wait, that's a problem. Right. The analytical side finally woke up enough to realize that you need to make a change. So, for myself, I changed jobs, right? One of my a previous boss that I had worked for once before said that he had done research on burnout, and he found out that for most people, once they burn out, they're gone, and that there is no way for them to recuperate in the same role that they're in, and that
Hmm.
they're either going to have to change jobs or change companies altogether
Wow.
for it to make a change. And so, you know, and I found that to be the case because I talked about it with management, and it just there wasn't there wasn't anything that was going to change the pattern that we had gotten into, right? And because we're all human beings, we're systems, right? There's this stimulus, this response, this process, you know, and so changing that is very, very difficult. And so it made sense that the only way to truly change kind of the whole burnout thing is to change roles or change companies altogether, right? And so that's why it's so critically important, and why I talk so much about it is like got to catch it before it gets to that point, because once you've burnt out, you're done, right?
Wow. Wow. Yeah, no, I think that's right on the money. I hadn't thought about that, but that totally makes sense. Is that you can't recover in a place that's already damaged you,
Right.
right? It's really hard. So with that, maybe one way to do that might be to take a sabbatical.
Hmm.
Might be to take a month or something and take the time off. I mean, if it's a job that you really did love, talk to your boss, ask
Hmm.
for a sabbatical, see if that might work, right? I mean, that's an opportunity for you as well. But I don't want folks to think that it's just about time. You have to heal. You have to do
Yeah.
some things things have to change. Right now, set those boundaries.
Correct.
Right now is the time to do that. If you're not quite burned out, ask for help. Right, ask for
Yes,
priorities.
absolutely, absolutely. If you're, I always tell people, if you're feeling like there's stress in the corporate world. Stress is part of life, right? But there's stress, and then there's stressed, right? Where if you feel like you're overworked, you're not able to, you're already starting to feel like I'm tired even when I wake up, or I'm not like I would finish projects, I would finish these things, and it would be like, okay, next. There was no more the joy of, yeah, all right, I did that. All right, what's next, right? It wasn't that kind of a feeling. It was okay, that's done. Now what, right? If you're at that point, that's where like that's a warning sign, right? That's where you start saying, hey, what can we do to fix this? What can That's where you start raising your hand to say, I need help. And it takes a brave person to raise their hand to say that they need help.
Does it really though? Because I think our bosses want us to be the best we can be. I think that's their goal for us. And I think we
I
think it
agree.
takes a brave person. I think what it really takes is just someone who is secure enough in themselves to say, you know what, hey boss, here's what's going on.
Mhm.
And if we flip that over and we think about the boss, right, the manager should be checking in regularly with their team,
Yes.
asking them about that. Because here, to your point, Dan, if I don't talk to you but every 6 months, in 6 months I could have gone from great to burnt out.
Yep,
So,
absolutely.
so we need to make sure that as leaders that we step up and we are brave enough or smart enough
Yes.
to ask that question and say, so Dan, how are you really?
Yep. That's what, I for the staff that I have, I meet with them weekly, every week. I'm like, and it's not a project readout. It's a, how are you doing? Right? That's because I need to know, what's going on at home. Because home life affects the work, right? Is the workload that you have, am I asking too much of you? Right? Is the leadership is the what, the corporate whatever is too much being asked of you. I still remember there was an audio program that I listened to a long time ago. It was on audio cassette, so it was a long time ago. And it was David White, who was a British poet,
I
and
know
he has
him.
this
Yep.
fantastic thing of soul in the workplace, and he uses the poem of Beowulf as a kind of the carrier of this whole conversation, this whole program about having soul in the workplace. And I mean, it's like 6 audio cassettes, so it's a pretty long thing. But the thing that I remember about it was that um, he said, as human beings, as souls, right, we want this broad experience of life, right? We want the hot and the cold and the boring and the exciting. We want it all, right? We want this broad experience of what it is to be human. And the corporate world, by its very nature, asks this very narrow sliver of who we are as people, right? To be productive, right? And yet, through that narrow straw, they will suck the entire life out of you, right? And I remember hearing that. And I had that same reaction, like, oh, ow, right? And so, for me, I always try as a manager, I was like, I want to try to broaden that as much as possible. I want you to be creative. I want you to have a broader experience of being human as much as you can in a place, in a for-profit place. But that's so much for me, what burnout is it's the sucking our life out through this very narrow sliver of what our existence is.
Wow.
And we need to have, so I have like rules of the team, and one of them is be creative. I want you to have some creativity. I want you to have fun at work. The joke with my team, and many of them see it, they'll laugh, is that I tell them my role here at this company, before projects, before reviews, before anything, my primary job is to make sure that work does not suck.
There you
Right?
go. That's a good leader.
That's it. That's the whole point. Because we spend so much of our lives at work. It can't be horrible, right? It can't suck.
Well, it can, and we got to make sure that it doesn't.
Well, yeah,
And
exactly.
as a leader, I love that you're stepping up and you make that a rule for your team, Dan. That's pretty awesome, because that then goes back to that whole, I'm not going to suck the life out of you through a little straw.
Right.
I'm not going to pull every bit of your juice through this little itty bitty straw, pull as hard as I can. So that, yeah, that's pretty awesome, man. That's a pretty awesome kind of, both of those metaphors are really powerful, Dan. I like them both.
Thanks.
So, Dan, in the effort of not sucking, I think we should leave with that point, and let's schedule some more time that we can do this again, and let's go deeper on a couple more topics. What do you think?
That sounds fantastic.
Awesome. So Dan, where do people find you first?
So you can find me on thirdpowerperformance.com. Let's see, got that one. So you can thirdpowerperformance.com right there, and everybody can find Phil
Find
there.
me. Yep, happyaf.substack.com, or real easy, thehappinesspractices.com. We'll get you there as well. Either one, they get you to the exact same place. So either one of those, check us out, get to know us a little more. If you have questions about this, if you're watching the replay, ask a question. We'll make sure we answer it next time.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Dan, this was fun, man. I love it.
Likewise. We definitely have to do this again.
Absolutely, we will.
Keep living your life.